Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary, back here again with another piece to walk you through. For those of you who have picked up the kits at the library, this is the finished piece, and everything that you're going to need to finish that piece is in the kit. Okay, you have a couple of brushes, you have your paints, and you have your piece, and you have some instructions in case you don't finish it and you don't really want to watch the video. But this is a cute piece. It's a little owl, and it's a box, so it's useful. Okay, and I'll start you with painting the dark gray. I used a dark gray on the entire outside of the piece. And the inside I did in the deep blue that you have there, not the lighter blue, but the deeper blue. Okay, but you can do whatever you want on the inside, but I would make sure that you get the outside finished with the paints that you have first, to make sure that you have enough paint, because the outside is more important, and then the inside could be done with whatever color that you have left. You can mix the colors together. It really doesn't matter. So I use the larger of the two brushes that you have, the square brush, or if you have other brushes that work better, you can use those also. So I always start on the bottom and base coat the entire piece in the dark gray. Now, when you put the paint on, someone just asked me this the other day, how do I not get ridges in my paint? Okay, this is how. You just keep working it and working it until you run out of paint in the brush. Like there's nothing left in the brush. But I make sure that it's smooth before I pull up more paint into my brush. Okay, and use the appropriate size brush for the area that you're working in. Now you have small brushes that were in your kits, but you can also purchase other brushes on Amazon, at Michael's. So if you're going to be painting, it's good to invest in some decent brushes. But you don't go dip for more color until you get that nice and smooth. The paint is smooth, all right? And that only happens by you smoothing it out with the brush. Now you see, I don't know if you could see the ridges in there. See that? And if I left that like that, that would dry like that. And then when I was pouncing or dry brushing, it would accent those areas that I don't want it to. So just keep pulling it out in all directions, like exit this way, and smooth it out. And then it's almost dry to the touch. When you put it on properly, it dries very, very fast. Okay, so I put enough in my brush, but I make sure I don't put too much in my brush, that I have the time to spread it out. You don't want it to dry before you have enough time to spread the color out. And right now we're just looking for a gray background. And then again, you could paint it however you want, but this is how I did this piece, so I'm going to walk you through doing it the way I did it. Okay. Now you could do this ahead of time and let it dry and then come back to it. But the whole idea is to get it nice and smooth. So you're going to do the top and the bottom in the gray. And if you notice, I gave you a little bigger pod for the gray and the rust color, and then smaller pods for the other colors that you don't need it as much of. That's why I say wait until you finish painting the piece before you do the inside. And if you don't have enough color, you could always mix colors together just to do the inside. It really doesn't matter what the color is on the inside. Now, this is really not to be used for food. I mean, the paints are non-toxic, but it's not a glaze. So I don't suggest you put anything in there except maybe wrapped candies. You can, but you can use it for paper clips. Girls can use it for, makeup and other, you could use it as a pencil holder without the top on it. It's just a catch-all for anything that you choose to put in it. Okay, so make sure you get that rim nice. Go around. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to this piece. Now, you might ask, and I know a lot of people ask, do I do it over the eyes? That's always a question I get. Yes, this is a base coat, so you're putting it on everything, and make sure that you wiggle it into those crevices. Wiggle the brush back and forth, and that will get rid of all the white spots. So you have to have enough paint in your brush for that to happen. But the paint goes very far. You do not need a lot. You should have plenty in that one pod that I gave you. should have done this ahead of time so you didn't have to watch me putting on the gray. But it gives you an idea of how I apply the color, not to get ridges in the paint by you watching me. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. Did you ever hear that? And by watching me, it, you know, shows you better how to apply the color than me just telling you how to do it. See, and I always go back and I smooth and I go back and check it out and all around. Now I'm working fast. You can slow down just a little bit. I'm doing this, you know, so you don't have to be bored watching me do this. Okay, so you really want all your white spots covered. So I always look at it upside down, because when you look at it upside down, you always see all the spots that you missed. Go back, smooth out, make sure that you have all those ridges out of the paint. Okay? Now, that's that piece. All right, so now I'm going to wash my brush. Swish it in the water. Don't leave it laying in the water. Swish it, don't bang it. Lay it across the top of the bowl until you can go and wash it in the sink with some soap. Okay, so now we're going to do the rust color. And the rust color is pounced on the entire body. Okay, all over. I then put the deeper blue on the tips of the ears and the lighter blue on here. But for right now, we're just going to pounce this lighter color, this lighter rust color. Actually, it's called terracotta. It's Mako's $3.99 terracotta for those of you who follow me on YouTube. All right, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of color in the brush, and I'm not going to be doing the chest area on the bottom piece. I'm just going to do all around. So what you're going to do is just pounce this on, and don't put a lot in your brush. You don't need much of this color. See, so it still leaves like an open kind of a look to it. Very little paint in the brush, and if you notice, I take it out of the brush on the paper towel so that I don't have too much paint in the brush, because I'm not painting it. It would defeat the purpose of having the gray underneath it. I want the gray to still kind of show through the rust color, and you can see that on him. It's like, almost like, you could also probably sponge it on, but you'd have to have very, very little in your sponge to do that. Okay, just go around it, pounce it on, go back, make sure it's all even. I go back and make sure everything is blended together properly. Now, on the tail in the back, I went back and I put some blue after, but for now, you can just put the rust. All colors go on top of each other. So now when it first goes on, how wet and bright it looks, but as it dries, it gets a little duller in color. But I still go back and blend it with the previous coat that I put on. Now the bottom I did in the gray, and I leave it in the gray. So I see a whole spot that I missed here. Well, hopefully my rust color will cover it. If not, I'd go back and touch it up with the gray. Yeah, the rust color will cover this. Okay. So you can do a better job than I'm doing. I'm just trying to demonstrate, so I'm not going to be making it as perfect as you should make your piece. Take your time and don't rush it like I'm doing. You can pause this video at any time. Okay, now I'm just going to go around and just make sure it's all blended. I see spots I missed here. Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, like I said, you can go back and you can make it look better. Just going back and just blending the colors together. Okay, there you go. And now I'm going to work on the top part. Now on the top part, it's his whole back, but not the eyes. So on this we're going to stay away from the eyes. This we stayed away from the chest, and on this one we're going to stay away from the eyes. So I'll start at the bottom. And where I have the blue on the tips of the, his ears? I don't know if those are his ears. But anyway, you can put it on there because the blue can go over it. And if a little bit gets on the eyes, it really doesn't matter. this is like an effect. It's not a perfect butting colors up against each other. That's difficult to do. So I always try to base coat everything, especially when I'm giving kits out and you have to do this on your own. It's very difficult to butt colors up against each other. You're always going back and forth, trying to get the colors to look, look right. So whereas this, it's okay to leave the gray and the showing between the light blue and the rust color that I'm doing here. You want that. It's almost like an antiquing. But if you were painting this, you'd have to be perfect with your lines, or otherwise it would show. But with the dry brushing or the pouncing, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why I like doing it like this. And if you wanted to get yourself some other brushes, I'm using a dry brushing brush right now, which is a little stiffer. I mean, you could do it with yours, but it'll just take a little bit longer. But this is, I believe they're ox hair brushes, but they're used for dry brushing. They're white hairs. They were white before I put the rust color in it. Okay. Okay, so I've got that on there. Now, I'm not going to put this brush in water right away because I want to use it to do other colors. So I'm going to pick up some of the navy blue first in my brush. Some of the deep blue. And I'm going to use that to clean out the rust out of my brush. It changes immediately because it overpowers it. And I'm going to put a little bit on the tips of the ears. So when I do the ears, I feather out and then feather down. And you could do this with that little square brush that you have. It'll work fine to do this. Okay? And you take it as far as you want. See that? And then I did underneath. And I do that on both of them. I don't know if these are horns or ears or what they are. So just accenting them. It doesn't matter what they are. This is a ceramic piece. It's not a real owl. So I did that there. And then I also did some outlining his wings on the side. So you could do that with your little square brush, and you would just put a little bit of the blue. Now my brush is bigger this time, so my lines are much bigger than I did on my sample. Much wider, I should say. And I could go back with the rust and change it, or I could just leave it. It doesn't really matter. There's no right or wrong when you're doing ceramics. As far as colors go and design, you're the artist and you could do it however you would like. Okay, so I have that there. And now I'm going to put in the brush. I'm going to use the square brush like you have. And I'm going to put a little bit of the lighter blue that I gave you in the brush to do his chest. Okay, again, I'm going to pick up just a little bit in the brush and blend it into the hairs of the brush on a paper towel. You should always have a water bowl, paper towel. You don't need a palette because you have the pods, but I have a palette here. And then because you have crevices here, I'm going to start from underneath on the bottom and work my way up. And to see if there's nothing in the brush, you see how it skips the crevices? But if you have too much in your brush, it's going to go in those crevices. So I put a little bit of the blue in the brush, the light blue, take it out, both sides of the brush, start from the bottom and feather up. It's a lot of dipping. You could turn your brush around, use the other side of your brush. Every time, I dip and wipe. Okay, got that? All right. I went out of the lines a little bit there. I mean, I could go back and touch that up. Okay, so we have it on there. And on his eyes, it's the same thing. You put a little bit of the blue in your brush, the light blue. Take it out. Now, because the crevices turn on the eyes, I go around the way you want to go the opposite way of the crevices. And you see that? The opposite way of the crevices keeps the color in the crevices, the gray, the dark gray. So lay your brush flat and go around it a couple of times because you have nothing in the brush. Remember, no paint in the brush, hardly anything. If you put a lot of paint in the brush, it's going to bleed into those crevices. And you may think that there's nothing in the brush, but I just keep going over it, and there's still color coming out of my brush. Okay? Now if you do it a second time, the color does get a little sharper. So I'm going to do the other eye. Flat, flat. I'm using the flat brush and keeping it out of those crevices. And that happens by not putting too much paint in your brush. Now I'm going to go over them a second time, and the color gets a little brighter the second time that you do it. And you can see that eye is done a second time, the difference in it. Remember, nothing, I have nothing in the brush, that little tip, and then I wipe it out and start with a very light hand to see how much paint you have in the brush. Okay, and then I also put a little bit on the tail in the back. You see that there? So I do that by going across the grain because the crevices are going up and down. So I'm just going to come in from the right and the left. And that's one coat. I think I did it with the darker blue, but this time I just did it with the lighter blue. It doesn't really matter. I can go back and put the darker blue on it. Like I said, you don't have to follow my colors, do whatever you want. I'm doing the lighter blue this time. You get to see two different ways of doing it. Okay, so I have the lighter blue back in there. And where else? That's just the chest area in there. Okay, and should I do the chest another time? Yeah, let's do the chest one more time so we give it a little brighter look. Nothing in the brush. I have nothing in the brush, and I just went over it a second time. Got that? Okay, so now this brush I am going to wash out because it's not a dry brushing brush. So your brush, you should wash it. Swish it, and then you lay it across the bowl until you're ready to go to the sink and wash it. Now we'll go with the mustard. Okay, I'm using Gare's mustard. And because I need very little, I'm just going to work out of a cap. I don't think I need any more than that. Now you could take your smaller of the two brushes and do your beak and do your toes. And when you do your toes, don't do the whole thing right across. Do each toe individually and leave the gray showing in between the toes. So first we'll do the beak. And the mustard is a little thin, so I think you need 2 coats. But let it dry. Don't glob it on that you think you're going to get a bright, the finished effect with 1 coat. Because it's thin, you should do 2 coats. But you have to let it dry, so I'm just putting 1 coat on right now. So now it's very thin, the first coat, so I'm just going to let that dry, and I'll go do his tootsies. And everything's going to need 2 coats, so I'm just going to do painted coats like that. Okay, so I'm going to leave the gray showing in between. I'll show you as I go along so you have an idea. Okay, so see how I left the gray showing in between? And you can see that I'm going to need 2 coats. So right now I'm just doing, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 toes. 6 toes. Does he really have 6 toes? It must be like 2 feet, and he has 3 on each one. Okay, so that's 1 coat. All right, and now I'm going to go back because this should be pretty dry. If you don't put it on heavy, it dries very fast. And we'll do a 2nd coat on his beak. And you can see the difference immediately. Now there's the 2nd coat. See how much brighter it is? And this is not really that dry, so you really should let them dry. And go back and do a 2nd coat on his toes. And I'm using my small pointy brush to do that. I have a little different brush than you have, but it has the same kind of a point. So use your pointy brush to do that. Now there's a 2nd coat. Okay. Now, what did I do next? We can take the navy blue, the very dark blue, and do his eyes. Now he has a lid So the lid you can leave in the light blue, which I didn't even do on this one, but that's what you basically should do. The lid here could be in the light blue. Okay, so I did the lid in the light blue, and then I'm going to do the middle section in the navy blue. That's the very dark blue that you have. And if you can draw a circle to make a pupil, you can do that, or you can just fill in the whole area. It's a small area, so it doesn't really matter. And then when that's dry, I put a dot of the yellow in his eye. Excuse me. And that kind of shows the reflection of light. Okay, so he has the navy blue in his eye. And you can see when it dries, I went back and I put a little dot of yellow in his eye. All right. Now, with the blue, the navy blue that I still have in my dry brushing brush, I put a little bit on the lighter blue area. Just a little bit. There's nothing in my brush right now, so I have to pick up a little bit more. And you don't have to. I just did it so that I would have a little bit of a contrast. And I just tried to hit the bottom. I didn't do the whole thing. I'm just trying to accent the little scallops. So what I did there, just accent the little scallops. You don't need a lot of that. All right. I think he's pretty much done. And I had done this in the light blue. I'll put a little bit of the deeper blue over it just to shade it a little bit. Okay, so I put a little darker blue over that. Now, like I said, you can do the inside in any of the colors that you have left. That's up to you. But now, as far as these dots go, you take the back end of your brush, and I gave you white, but you can also do it in the mustard, or you could do it in the dark blue. But I have the white here. I'll show you how I did it with the white because it just stands out more. And you do it with the handle of the brush, and you dip and dot. So every dot that you do, you dip again. Otherwise, there'll be different sizes. So 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots. See what I'm doing? Okay, and I'm putting a little dot at the bottom of, or in the middle, wherever you want to put it, of every scallop on his chest. So I either dip every other one or every one, because they will get smaller. If you do dots right in a row, each dot that you do, if you don't dip again, gets smaller and smaller. Okay, look how cute that looks with the dots. And you can do this accent in his eye, either with the mustard or you can do it with the white. And this one I did it with the white. Okay, so that's a little owl box. Now, if you wanted to seal it, they sell Krylon spray. I think Walmart sells a spray. They sell it in matte or gloss. If you don't want to spray, and spraying should only be done outside. Don't ever spray in your house. They have paint-on sealers, and they actually come in jars like this, and they have a clear matte and they have a clear gloss, so you could do either one. I know that Amazon sells them, but they're a little expensive. And someone just told me, I think Hobby Lobby has a sealer that is pretty inexpensive, and it's in a pint bottle, not quite as big as this, but it's in I think it was in a bottle this size. So you can get that and paint a coat of sealer on it, and this way if you ever want to wash it, it's good to go. So that's our little owl box, and I thank you all for joining me at doing this owl box. And if you have any questions, those of you who have the kits have my email, so you can contact me, and if you would like to have a picture, I can email you a picture also. So everyone stay safe and have a great spring. I'm looking forward to the warm weather. And thank you very much again.